Authors Plus.
And Jacob Pamarin from Authors Press. We would like to welcome you, Eric Valdespino. Today is February 26, 2024 at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And we are very excited to your masterpiece today because all our listeners and readers were very excited and ecstatic to get to know your masterpiece. So could you please start by telling us a little about yourself?
Okay. Well, I'm not that exciting. Trust me. I mean, I'm self-employed. I have a business in Henderson, Nevada. I'm in the, I guess, health and fitness arena. I've had many times work with doctors and therapists across the country, and so I have one foot in life science and the other foot in being an entrepreneur, you might say. So my passion for writing has always been there. This is the first time that I've actually taken the opportunity to dwell a little bit more into it rather than talking about it. As you know, when things go your way and my business is relatively successful, and so I have an opportunity to take more time for myself personally rather than working at a business. So it allows me to do the things that I want to do. And so that's when I started writing. Actually, I started writing for the industry that I'm into, and a lot of it has to do with how your body and how your mind relate to your own reality here on this planet, you might say. So I'm kind of a mixed bag of information. I'm enough to be dangerous, but at the same time, I'm very reserved in my communication with people. I don't want to be too political in one way or the other, but I do have my points of views, and I'm interested in getting people to read my books because they are somewhat interesting to what is happening in today's world, you might say. And so I don't know where you want me to kind of start and end, but that's primarily my focus.
Yeah, sounds interesting, and I hope that our listeners are really, pleased with all this information because we really want to know our authors first so that it will actually add on to intrigue and interest to read a masterpiece. So please, Eric, tell us, can you tell us about a bit what inspired you to write Last Alien Encounter in Part 1?
Yeah, Part 1 was the kind of the introduction that I had in the back of my mind. I'm very interested in history. History going back 10, 15,000 years ago, just not American history. I'm very interested in how we as people roamed the world, with nothing more than just the bottom of your feet, in essence. We're able to cross the plains of Africa and lead into North America, and then eventually set up systems that a lot of people still don't quite understand, how we operate as a society, because there's a mystery behind it. And so I played off that mystery, more or less, with a purpose, and given the question, what if, that we were visited by aliens that were from a very intelligent source, another galaxy perhaps, and were mining for a blue crystal, a very rare blue crystal that we have in the core of our world. that nobody knows about except the aliens which visited us 10,000 years ago. And that's how the book started. And I introduced the characters based upon what they were going to find. And I tried to give them a strong character, more or less, to weather the storms that were coming towards them, which basically is greed. And, you know, everywhere you turn, you have governments looking in your back pocket or looking at what you're doing and how you're doing it. Primarily, they are good to have, but at the same time, you know, I don't want to get too political, but at the same time, they hinder us from being entrepreneurs almost. So the whole book kind of starts out with part one as being a misfit individual who finds himself, you know, as an alcoholic after his wife passed away, and doesn't have any friends outside of a student that he kind of like thought, well, you know, this guy's got the same kind of ambitions that I do. And together they form an alliance, or had formed an alliance. And the book kind of starts there with that ability to look back at our future, because what they found were giant heads in a cavern in Montana that represented the same heads found in South America. And those giant carved heads were primarily distant gods, you might say, from the different Indians that, you know, came from North America and filtered down into South America and Mexico. And so the question is how could that have happened? And it lays the foundation for me to go in now and tell the story about this rare blue crystal. So that's what inspired me and I guess really what inspired me was the very simple way that we see energy. Energy right now is, you know, looked upon as, you know, gas and oil and diesel fuel, and now all of a sudden we got into electric and solar, and the government now is trying to push into our communities, you know, solar and electric cars, which are okay. The problem is that it's more or less dysfunctional right now because we're not set up yet. It was like an avenue to research, and all of a sudden given the monies to the four big automakers and saying, you're going to make electric cars, and now everybody has to buy them, or at least they're going to try to buy them, and a lot of people are saying, no, I don't see any use for it. Besides that, it's a strain to have an electric car because you don't know where to go to have it charged. And sometimes you don't even realize you can charge it at home, but a lot of people just don't want to get into that. So the beginning of the book is really interesting because it chases down the people, and they come to find out that there is a need to find more clean energy, and it so happens that this clean energy is in a cavern in Montana. And so it's kind of the first part, book one, is very interesting. I've had a lot of people read it and give me a lot of compliments over it. And of course, when you start realizing the complexity of a society, we listen and we follow. We don't lead because we're not leaders, in essence. We're Homo sapiens that like to follow. So when somebody has an idea and we think it's good, well, we follow that until we find out that, we really have a hard time with that. So then it's discouraged and everybody moves on. So that was sort of the beginning and inspiration to write The Last Alien Encounter.
Before we go to the book 2, Eric, I'm
Yeah.
really move to what you have shared to me about part one. Well, actually, it's a very knowledgeable and a very interesting information that you've shared. But of course, I'd like our listeners and also our readers to really, because this is the next question is actually, it excites me to know the concept on Asian nomadic people encountering giant aliens is really unique. And what
Right.
sparked the idea for this fascinating story? Because all of us actually as readers would like to know details, but for this one, I wanted to give what inspired the fascinating story. So our listeners will also get to know your thoughts about this.
Yeah. Well, as I was mentioning to you, book one is sort of like the introduction to what's going to happen in book two. There's an individual, his name is Chris, and Chris Matthews is destined, you might say, to be the person who is in book one, book two, and book three. But Chris he is our somewhat of a leading role in this investment that he put himself into, and that is to find more information about this blue crystal. So my feeling was that there's a purpose for that. It's an overall theme, actually. And the overall theme really comes from my own imagination, is that, I wanted to write about something that caught your imagination. And it could have been nonfiction. I mean, it could have been very much involved with what's happening in today's world, but I decided to put it into a sci-fi genre because it gives me more latitude in what my story is all about, and it gives me the choice to make with the characters, so they in turn share this information with other people, but nobody can believe that this is actually happening. Now, the idea of book one and the people go into now book two, which is the windfall that they have and the idea how it all started 10,000 years ago. So book two is the one I was in reference to, gives you the information of how it all happened. And that's with the story of Mia and her two brothers and her family that came across the Bering Sea and landed up in parts of North America. Unbeknownst to them, they stumbled across a group of people, indigenous Indians, you might say, 10,000 years ago, that had access to these giant gods that they called, that came from the sky. And in regular history, we have some very unusual classifications of gods, you might say, of how indigenous Indians saw and view the world. And their reality was that they believed that certain gods came down and helped them find food and shelter and gave them the tools to work with. I took that to the next level and said, what if these gods were miners from a different galaxy and they happen to be here, and where they live is up in space, maybe 50 miles in space, in these huge spacecrafts that do nothing more than mine for this blue crystal. Now, the blue crystal is a symbol, primarily. It's a symbol of finding what we have. The resources that we have in this world is probably immense. But we only look for things that enables the so-called entrepreneurs to find lithium for batteries, for instance, or certain kinds of other war minerals that you can use for making bombs and things of that nature. But nobody realizes that, and there are some crystals that you put them together, and the size of probably an apple, that crystal will be an equivalent of 27,000 iPhones. Now, there's a company in France that made that discovery, but nobody seems to really care about it. Now, that's not fiction. That's a real fact. And we have so much potential in this world, but we choose the items that are most suitable for capitalization, making money. Yeah. So, when you stop and think about it, we have so many different devices for communication, and we spend trillions of dollars on them, but we don't have any devices that kind of help us relieve stress and anxiety and try to help us with mental illness and things of that nature, if you know what I'm saying. So it's a play off on what's happening in today's world. The whole book is actually. Book 2 is, the whole book is dedicated on Mia and her family and living with the residue, you might say, of what the aliens gave these people. It was sort of like a goodwill mark, we're leaving these crystals to you, so at one time somebody who might have intelligence will know how to use it. And it's made primarily to seek out, and the story revolves around this family and this village called Ode. And Ode is very much a mecca now of sophistication, you might say, but nobody knows about it, and whoever does visit with them realizes that they've got something that nobody else has. And of course, they don't have any communication except for their visual eyes when they see there, and they evolve. So there's a lot of people that stay tuned to that village, and then other people travel off south for warmer weather. And that's really how we are as humans. We, even if you saw something that would be remarkable, that you don't know how it's made, well, somebody made it, and somebody knows how to do things. And it is kind of odd because some of the structures that we see in today's world in Peru, for instance, there are constructions of walls and things that are almost unremarkably interesting because we don't have tools to make that in today's world. And these things were made, 8,000 to 9,000, 10,000 years ago. And so there's a constant revolving door on how did they do this. So no matter where we go and what we see in our world, we sometimes see it with different lenses. And I'm one that would love to find out what it's really like to be living in those days and finding out how people were able to make tools for carving, for instance, and using huge boulders and moving 20-ton boulders around like it's nothing. So the capabilities that these people had were nothing compared to what we have today, but we still can't replicate what they did 8,000 or 9,000 years ago. So that's what the book is really all about. And of course, book 2 is, I had so many people send me reviews that they thought the book was so well written and they like it because they themselves understand where they are in their reality. And I had this one doctor, I think it was a woman, who decided that she was going to start writing books as well because she felt the urge that even though she's a doctor, she thought getting out of my realm, into writing something that would be different than what she knows, is very inspiring. And I like that because we need to inspire more people with ideas and things that make you think. And trust me, I've read a lot of books about self-awareness and how to clear your mind and how to be a better person, a better father, or read books about, the massacres that were happening in our past, and, we could have avoided them and so forth and so on. But it doesn't make you think. And so the way I like to write is to educate a little bit and tell a story about that, and then educate you about something entirely different that perhaps you've never thought or heard before, and be able to explain that in layman's terms. So that's what I draw on. I draw on many things that are part of my life, and I put them into sort of like an educational realm of learning something when you read anything that I write. The thing that's interesting is that science, as we know it, has only been around for only a few hundred years, and you stop and think about how science originated. I mean, it's, 300 years somebody decided, I'm going to look through this telescope and look at what's around me and see that we're not the center of the universe, that we're only part of it. And of course, we're just learning about our environment. We're learning primarily about science. Even though we're developing ideas, I took the book and I wanted to come up with a completely different science that nobody's ever heard before.
Correct.
And
Yeah. So, actually, I'm very excited to get to know more about the information and then per chapter, because, as you mentioned that you really want to inspire a lot of people, especially the experience that you actually got from a doctor, that after reading your book, they are very inspired to write. And
right.
Also this one is also an eye-opener for your listeners and our viewers and even our readers to really, provide a solution to different problems that we're facing in this generation, and also to motivate others to really chase answer to the questions that lingers in their minds. So I also
right.
want to, for sure, our listeners today and your readers would like to know this one. The blue crystal left behind by the aliens plays a significant role in your book. So a while ago you mentioned that blue crystal is finding resources in this world. So I just want to know what symbolic meaning does it hold in the narrative? Like, the one I mentioned?
Yeah. Well, like I said, the book is not that complicated, and the message is pretty much the same, and that is how do we get away from the greed factor, primarily? Greed, some people would say greed is great because it allows you to be sort of like an independent person that you're going to go out there and, change the world. And sometimes you step on people and sometimes you hurt people, but primarily, it means aggression. I'm on the other hand to say that what this world lacks is truth and wisdom. I know it sounds kind of corny, but you stop and think about that if we're led by lies and led by governments that all they tell are lies, and you have to be smart enough to know it's a lie, and what you do is you go out and search for the truth. Sometimes the truth is raveled into a multitude of different complexities. And we don't know those complexities, just like somebody will say, well, the reason why we are giving money away to certain countries is for the betterment of them, or the betterment of the overall structure of how the world works, when in reality, there's an underlying issue of why and where money is being given to and who is actually using it and what is the bottom line. We don't know all those factors because we're not involved with governments and we're not involved with the secrets of government. So we follow people that got information that we can believe. Don't forget, the population of Earth is like 7.8 billion people. That's a lot of people. And so when you think about there is famine, there is disease, there is everything you can imagine to disintegrate us, but we don't seem to have the sources that pull us together as citizens of the world. All we become are people who have money to buy products. We become consumers. And I don't know if that's the right place for people to be, even though it sounds like we're okay because, you make money, you buy something, and that's what makes the world go around. It just seems to me that the book and the blue crystal that I write about are out there to be discovered and treat people kinder as opposed to just being consumers. So, I write about the book, and there's a lot of hints within book 2 and book 3 that explain a little bit about how ant colonies work and how nature works. Because things of nature have got patterns, as you probably know. And those patterns are not to destroy the planet. Those patterns are to enforce the stability of the planet. But along comes people that have no idea what they're doing. All they're looking for is opportunities to sell something that's either going to make you sick or poison you so they can profit. So there's this problem with the way we operate as people. As you know, I'm not against capitalism. Trust me, I'm in a world of capitalism, but I'm also in the world of awareness, and one thing that's lacking from us is wisdom. And I keep bringing that up because very similar to what we all talked about is that we need something to hang on to, that we feel like there is some hope that's going to happen, even though we can't make it happen because we're not smart enough to do so. But again, what if it was given to us like Otis in the book 3, in book 2, I should say. Book 2 and book 3, I introduce a young child by the name of Otis. And Otis is a conduit to the people who left the blue crystal on Earth. And he's the only person in book 2 and 3 that you are able to follow and see what direction he's trying to maneuver into. He's trying to contact the most intelligent people on Earth. And who are those people? Those people are the richest people on Earth. And it's very difficult for a 7-year-old child to identify that this child has got something that they want, but they don't know how to get it, and they don't even know how to use it. And he's the one that explains to the people around him, and of course this is in book 3, the potential of the blue crystal and what it can do. I mean, it can literally help society bend the other way. Instead of making medicine profitable, pharmaceutical profitable, you make medicine help people to get better and live longer without the stress and without the anxiety. So, again, I'm not against what we're doing as a society.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm trying to do is provoke thought and provoke actions that would be more or less the right thing to do, as opposed to let's just do the wrong thing and who cares because we're going to probably get away with it anyway. We have good attorneys. And even if people sue us, we're going to deny. And that's what's really going on in our world today. People are taking products, they're consuming products, and they're dying from these products. And some of the products are made by pharmaceutical agencies and companies. Other products are made by people that have thought well about a product that tastes good, it feels good, it makes you feel good, but it kills your liver. So these are an abundance amount of information that I try to invoke into people to think, what are we doing to ourselves? And so it's a thought-provoking entertaining book, I think. And what happens in book 3 is quite interesting because it leads you to know what's the end. And of course, the other book that I wrote is called Otis, the Last Alien, is the aftermath information that you get after you read book 1, 2, and 3. You read Otis, the Last Alien, and it kind of gives you information about what is the right thing and what is the wrong thing that we're doing in our society. And it's quite interesting. So I don't know where I get this information from, to be honest with you. When I first started the book, I realized that I had no place to go outside of a thought or an idea. And the more I wrote, the more I realized that there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. But the end is never solidified. The end is always open door because we don't know what our future is.
Correct.
But it gives you the ideas that pollution is one of our biggest problems in this world. You know, we feel that we have information that would be critical about pollution, but in my story with Otis, he brings people in his mind to a different realm to have them see what a different world is like, living in a place that has no illness, has no trash problems. They have no litter anywhere. The world is clean and pristine, and they live within nature. And nature provides so much that you literally are taken back over it. And this is all disclosed in these different books that I write. And it's quite interesting, you know, when you think about it's thought-provoking, and most of the people who do like to read it will compliment me and by giving me, you know, 5 stars and going, hey, this is really it's really interesting. You know, what is the answer? Well, the answer is us, really. It's usually the person who says, you know, I'm going to stop buying products that are bad for me. I'm going to start buying things that are more or less better for the environment, you know, and, you know, we're still never going to be 100%, you know, but if we have a start, the correct way of doing things, you end up with an environment or I should say, a society that is made primarily from the good of humanity as opposed to the worst of humanity. And we all know what the worst of humanity is because we've seen wars throughout our entire lifespan, and what good does it do? I mean, all it does is that everybody still has their land, you know, but if you try to get into their land or my land, well, we put in blockades and we try to kill off everybody. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just unfortunate that we are who we are. And again, humanity would be, I think, used for the best or the betterment of each other, rather than trying to find ways to sell you something that you're going to eventually die from. You know, give it enough time. If you keep taking it long enough, you're going to die from it. You know, and so, you know, yeah, go ahead.
I can feel that, you know, your compassion, your passion, and the way how you unfold the information, because there's when I'm going to read this book, there's immediate action. You know, every steps that you are now sharing is that, for me, it should be a right judgment, finding a truth in the different questions running in my mind, and also the way how we used to, you know, I mean, if you have the resources, how are you able to use it? And also, you have to be careful in using all the resources so that people will actually enjoy it if ever given a chance to. And the way how you share or run the story is something that people or the readers or listening right now will actually have this idea, oh yeah, I'm doing the wrong thing, so how can I do it? I mean, how can I do it in a way that it is acceptable in the righteousness way of how we should do it, and also
Right.
I also feel the compassion in terms of, yeah, you're committing mistake right now or you're doing wrong right now. So how will you do it the way that it should be done? Okay. So also
Correct.
our eager readers would like to hear from you in terms of this question, the interplay between the ancient nomadic family and the giant aliens is intriguing. So, how did you develop the relationship dynamics between these two groups?
Well, it's funny because my thinking was that the people that were from a different galaxy were not people so much as they were autonomous workers. And, we all have to realize that space and time versus movement in space takes thousands of years for us to travel from one planetary environment to another planetary environmental place. So I believe that most people that would be able to actually visit us here in this world are robotic, autonomous UPCs or CPUs, I'm sorry, rather than other humans. So the way I see it is that the so-called miners, when they came here, let's say that they were familiar with this planet because it holds a huge amount of silica. Now, silica is, in a way, what their resources are looking for. But I brought that back into the silica that they were looking for was a blue crystal. And the blue crystal holds a huge amount of memory, as you might know. But if you don't know how to use it, you just see a pretty rock. You just see a crystal rock, and you go, oh, isn't that beautiful? If you don't know what to look for and understand it. So intelligence is, again, part of the problem. We get educated, but we don't get wise. Wisdom is lost. So you've got to understand it's a sort of a balance. When you're wise, yes, you're intelligent, but you're also part of what makes one wise is not to say I'm the richest man in the world, is that when you're wise, you're probably the most humble person in the world because you understand that with wisdom, you find the keys that open up the door to what is really essential for humans to live in this kind of environment that we have. I mean, we live on this planet, and we live on the top of the planet because we see the sun and we use that resource to grow food. I mean, if we didn't, we would be earth dwellers and living underneath the world, you might say. And God only knows there could be that happening in other planets. We just don't know. But I'm just giving you an idea that the giant aliens that came here, I believe, were not human at all. They were more or less autonomous miners that did nothing more than, they didn't communicate with the indigenous Indians. They did their job. They were there for years, and they interacted with themselves more or less, but they were more or less observed by these indigenous Indians. And so they had a lot to view, a lot to see, and they interacted with them. But what was interesting is that if you're around this blue crystal And the blue crystal is like, it contains certain information that if you're around it long enough, you pick up that information, because information is knowledge. And it enables you to learn from that, as opposed to having normal academia. You know, a professor telling the student, here's my philosophy of life. You learn it, you become good at this thing, and you can do what you want to do, but you have to understand that it's his philosophy that you learn, which is not always the best thing to do, as you know. Most people want to learn, but what they want to learn are things that make an understanding of where their reality is. And we don't have that in our universities. We don't learn that. You end up listening to different academian rules and the way the school wants to have you learn. It's their rules and their regulations. So you never really get into education or learn how to be intelligent humans and learn how to become wise people. And that's what's lacking, I think. And so the story revolves around that, and I identified that by listing greed as one of the manifestations of what happens when people get so smart or they get intelligent. They just figure out some ways to make more money, because money is the resource, the final end of what they receive to gain what they want. They receive more and more money from the people that they sell products to. So greed is a factor. And so that's what the whole premise is on the books, and how it intertwines with the family of Mia and her family, because they were taught this is the right way to operate a village. This is the right way to keep things together. You do it for the betterment of the citizens. You do it not for yourself as leaders, but you do it for the betterment of the people that you're, in a way, ruling, but you're not ruling them as much as you're giving them a chance to adapt to nature. Because in my belief, in my world that I like to be able to think about, is that nature is something that we take for granted, but yet it's the focal point of how we live with nature. So if you destroy nature, you're basically destroying ourselves. And that's the other, unfortunately, that's the other part of the story that I don't disclose too much, because then becomes, you know, well, you're an environmentalist and you believe in clean air and, you know, make sure that there's no trash on the floor and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I do believe in that, but I also believe that we can still live with each other, even though we have so-called natural laws that we have to abide by, and that's to keep our nature clean and energetically involved with us. And, you know, there's people that don't give one dime to an idea like that. They just abuse it and feel that I'm going to put everything in a trash bin. It's going to be picked up by a big trash truck and off it goes, and nobody even cares where it's going. We don't even know what's in that trash. You know, so we pollute a lot of our environment unnecessarily, but we don't know what is it that we need to learn in order for us to turn that corner. And that's the question. Where do you find information that makes you a better person? And that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's right, Eric. So I know that it is a cycle of life, right? So we have to take good care of our nature so that nature will take good care of us. It's just that, you know, our micro efforts will actually have a macro effect in the future. So we really need to be, we have to have a right judgment and a right way on how we're able to use our resources so that in the near future or the next generation will enjoy the same thing. Yeah. And
Exactly.
yeah, thank you for that idea of moving our readers and our listeners to really be more aware on their actions and then think of what is the long-term effect of each actions. So I also observed that in terms of the theme of technology and alien advancement in prominent in the book that you created, Eric, I just want to know, how did you envision and create the futuristic technologies described in the story you made?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And very briefly, what it is that we hold our scientific community, if you want to call that, holds a huge, vast amount of natural resources that we have. We don't have to make up anything. We don't have to go to a laboratory and set something on fire and say, well, the residue is what we're going to use to make this, this, and this. We already have resources. And they're the form of minerals. They're the form of how nature revolves around this planet. We know that the planet itself has huge amounts of resources. Biggest problem is that if those resources are taken away from us and be used for a different method, then we lose the focal point of what they're actually here for. Now, I'm not saying that they were left here for us to use, but I do believe that, in essence, if we were thinking correctly about the different kinds of resources that we have, we probably would be able to have one individual out of thousands to come up with an idea that instead of making, a crystal radio, I'm just using that as an example, it is to use a crystal for a learning hub, for instance. Now, I talk about that in book 3 and Otis, the Last Alien, is that he wanted to come up with a learning hub, and that learning hub is nothing more than getting close to the blue crystal to where young people would be able to go to and learn without the foils and the problems with academia. And again, that's where it kind of all evolved from, is, well, what can we do to make things better? Well, we probably have resources. We do have science, but the science is kind of kept back a little bit. Now, I'm not a true believer in this, but I do believe that medicine has a cure for cancers. And will it ever make that leap to say we're going to produce a remedy for cancers? Or do we leave it open for the purpose of making more money, more cash flow with the people who do have cancer? Now, in a way, I do believe that there's middle ground, if you know what I'm saying. So I do believe that we're sophisticated enough in today's world to probably end mental health. I do believe that we have a way to end certain kinds of diseases with certain things, but these remedies are part of the greed problem that we have in this world. And who owns health? Well, health is owned by that we have in this world. And who owns health? Well, health is owned by pharmaceutical and the FDA rules and regulations. So, you don't want to be like it's all their fault. It's just the very simple fact that science and technology has grown, but look how it's grown from and to. I mean, the thing is that we have fast computers, we have fast iPhones, and we have unbelievable ways to getting information from my desk to a desk that's in West Germany, and in a matter of seconds it's there. But what do we do when somebody's child has got a cancer that child only has 6 months to live? You know what I mean? So there's the compelling factor of who we are as a society. Where are we going with technology, and why can't we come up with the technology that benefits the people that are around us? We're all human. You know, we're not, correct. We shouldn't be divided into classifications. You know, well, you're kind of brown and I'm kind of dark color, and we have all these different nationalities that are competing against us in a religious kind of way. But more or less, we find ourselves being different when basically we're all the same. And that's the part where I think wisdom steps in. Mm-hmm. If you have wise people that are humble, then you find yourself making the right kind of decisions that are for the betterment of our societies. And I'm just not saying United States is the problem. I'm saying the world is the problem, because there's too many people that can be helped with a multitude of different things if they knew that there are people out there looking out for their best interest rather than trying to sell you something.
Correct.
And I think, I think that it sounds like it's kind of corny in a way, like, well, we need to have somebody that can step in and show these entrepreneurs that it's better to come up with a product that's better for mental awareness as opposed to having something that's fast where you can download a movie on your phone. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people want to download movies faster on their thing, and they could care less about the mental the mental awareness of young mm-hmm. people that need help, and they don't have a chance. They're going to be left in an area all their life. So anyway, I really appreciate you asking these questions, because it allows me to spew out the information that I have stored in my memory banks for years and years. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be a critic, because that's not who I am.
Yeah.
I like entrepreneurs. I like people that know how to think and react to different ways. I like new ideas, and ideas make things happen. Right. But it just falls in the category that sometimes we go beyond that, and the almighty dollar and greed is the biggest factor that we have. How do we control that?
Eric, I also understand, based on what you are telling, that if we only use the science and technology in the purpose where we can help others to cure a medicine and cure a disease, rather, using the medicines and all the efforts and resources that we have, it's just we don't need to be selfless and selfish in terms of providing this cure to different problems that our generation are now experiencing. And also, I just want to know, the book ends with a cliffhanger, leaving readers eager for the next installment. Can you give us a hint about what to expect in Last Alien Counterpart 2?
Yeah, the book actually ends in part 3, because there's 3 parts to that whole series. It presents facts that are hard for us to deal with, and that is, I made the child, his name is Otis. He's only 7 years old, but he has the mind of a very wise person. And if you read between the lines, Otis has only been on this planet for a very short period of time. So he's not been stained by the complexities of the world, you might say, where people only think of things to better themselves. And so Otis is the one who steps in, more or less, and tries to balance the power to the people who hold that power. He tries to make it look as if you need to change your ways, because if you continue going in this direction, we're all going to die eventually. So what has to happen is that it's better to render yourself with people who hold that power and hope they change, instead of making it be expensive to have something that you really need, is to give it to you free so you can better yourself as people. And that whole end of the last alien encounter leaves you with a question, what's going to happen next? And that's when I wrote Otis, the Last Alien. That kind of gives you a cap of how it is, what it's like to be an innocent child in a world filled with greed and potential problems that you can't do it. Now, the thing is, when I wrote the book, I also wrote the book, it sounds like I'm writing the book to where when you do read it, you go, oh my God, this is just too strange. But it's extremely entertaining because of the characters.
Yeah.
And so what I didn't want to do is to make it all down, like, oh my gosh, we're just a horrible society. We are who we are, and we are kind of pitted against each other until you come across somebody who might be so knowledgeable and so wise, but he's only a child. And you go, that's not possible. How can this child have all the answers? And that's what makes the story so interesting.
Correct.
Because the child is nothing more than a conduit from the wise aliens who want to make this planet a better place, because we do have a good track record as far as intelligence goes. We just use it unwisely. And that's what I think the story really is all about.
Yeah, and it's definitely, Eric, there's a lot of things that really excited to get to know more about this masterpiece that you have. And also our listeners and readers are really excited to really go through this chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3 and other masterpieces that you have. So this is the vital question I'd like to ask you, where we can purchase your book.
Well, it's everything is on Amazon, Kindle, or Barnes & Noble. Those are the two main places where you can purchase the book, read the book, e-book, or get an idea who I am that enables you to think a little bit different. I'm probably no different than anybody else. I've been relatively educated by myself, you might say. I don't have the earmarks from some professor giving me an ideology that he believes in and wants me to be part of that. So I'm pretty much my own person in a sense. That's just who I am. And of course, I have a family, 5 children, and a wife that I've had most of my life. Ever since I was about 16, 17 years old, we've been married. And I find life in itself, you cannot take it seriously, because you'll be extremely upset with what is happening right now. And we live in this great country, United States, but in a way we are, sometimes we're just so unaware that there are bad people out there ready to take us and put us in a place where they can control us. And that's what we have to be very, very careful of. And that's why you need people around you that are wise, not arrogant, and not saying, well, let's go after them and kill them first. That's not the idea. The idea is to be aware of your realm that you live in. The environment that we live in is obviously part of that. But I do believe that, being a writer, and I've written books most of my life, but never really had them published. And, you know, it's kind of funny when you start getting into the publishing world, you find yourself with different questions. How are you going to write something that is going to be entertaining and thoughtful at the same time? That's the challenge. And so, you know, I think I did that. At least I have a lot of people that have read it. I mean, I've only had these books published since the end of last year and the beginning of this year. And I'm actually working on another book that I think is being helped, and that's called Raising Edwin. Okay. And Raising Edwin is another great book that's going to come out. Well, it's already out, but that visits a completely different set of rules, not like The Last Alien Encounter or Otis. Then I'm writing a fifth book that's called 0903, and that is the book of Exodus that happens from another planet, that they all come here. All 2.5 million people come here to this planet looking for a new life, a new beginning, because their planet is being wrecked by internal core problems. So, you know, I write the,
Eric, for all the information that you shared to us, I'm really moved to really read all these books that you made. So, in connection to what you mentioned a while ago, that in also dealing with on how you're able to publish and also create more awareness about the idealism and also the story that you'd like to share to our listeners and readers. So I'm actually would like to ask you, how was your experience working with Authors Press? Just to wrap up.
Well, they've been great. I would recommend Authors Press to anybody who writes a book or who wants to have their book exposed properly. And, you know, there's a lot of information out there to the authors, and sometimes you get lost or you get in a little crevice that you can't get out. I'm having my books represented in the London Fair, I think next month or the month after. I'm not too sure when that's going to happen. And, you know, I find it very easy to work with the people that are there. They know what they're doing. They advise you very well. They don't try to take every dime that you make. You know, they give you good advice, and that's what we need. And I think the people at Authors Press are very wise people, and we should listen to people that are wise. Let's put it that way.
Thank you so much, Eric, for sharing that very exciting series, and also stories that for sure our listeners right now and readers will definitely catch your masterpiece and really read your books. And from Authors Press, would like to thank you for your time. And also, this is not the end of our journey, but this is just the start of our journey. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate you, and I appreciate your questions. And have a great day. Okay.
You too. Thank you. What I say.
Okay. Bye bye.
Authors Press.